I feel really lucky this week to have found two acoustic guitars at what I hope will turn out to be a really good price. Got this Yamaha, it's an FD02, and this Fender FA-100. So before I actually forked over the cash, I looked at them a little bit, made sure the neck's good, no breaks in the neck. Tuners seem to be functional. This one's only got 4 strings and they're classical guitar strings, but so far no harm, no foul. The action over the higher frets doesn't look that bad. The action over the first fret is way too high, of course. It's been played a lot. Okay, on to the Fender. Looks like the fretboard has shrunk a tiny bit. The ends of the frets are real sharp and they are starting to stick out. The action is crazy high over the higher up frets. You could almost fit a pencil in there. The tuners are generally pretty straight. This one, it's a little bit tilted down. And of course, I made sure there's no breaks in the neck. It's never been re-glued. The bridge isn't falling off. It's in good shape. Nice little dent right there. But overall, it's not too bad. So the very first thing I'm gonna do now is give him a good cleaning. Before I jump into leveling the frets, I'm going to see where the truss rods are at. Oddly enough, the Fender wants the 5/32 Allen wrench. The Yamaha wants the 3/16, a little bit bigger. So I'm going to adjust it to medium loose. I'll leave it there, make sure that it's nice and straight, and then I'll figure out how level the frets are from there. I'm going to make sure I get rid of any dangerously sharp fret ends. Take my fret leveling file. Get everything flush at the edge of the fretboard. Much better now. The first part of leveling the frets is getting them covered in marker. Then I'll gently run the file over the frets and see how evenly or unevenly the marker gets filed off. As I kind of expected, this is not really good. These 3 frets have had a lot of marker taken off, whereas these 3 were not even touched by the file. These are too low. This one barely touched the file, too low. This one got a lot of marker taken off, so it's too high. I'm going to file off all the marker and then put marker on again and do that 2 or 3 times, making sure that I get them all dead level. Let's see how level the Yamaha is. Yeah, the action wasn't too bad on this guitar. There's a couple that look like they might be a tiny bit low. I didn't have to lower the frets much at all to level them on the Yamaha. On the Fender, I'm having to do a bit of filing. I've got the strings back on with a little booster. Frets are covered in marker. I'm going to level the frets again while the strings are at tension. I'd like to move on to the crowning, but there's a few things I might do first. I'm going to lower the bridges and see where the action's at and make sure that it's playing good and doesn't need any more leveling. Almost every acoustic guitar, especially if it's made of cheaper wood, is going to warp up toward where the strings are pulling it. So usually all you have to do is lower the bridge, putting the low E string back on without any bridge in place. Since the action's fine with no bridge in there, what that tells me is I need to lower the bridge to about the height where the string is right now, which means I need to sand down the saddle. I'll start sanding down the bridge, and then I'll put the strings back on and check where it is. There's no buzzing whatsoever. To me, the next logical step is to file down the nut slots to the proper height. But I want to put the fine-tuning finishing touches after that on the bridges and the frets. The best way to gauge the height of the strings over the first fret, I use feeler gauges. This one's made out of a string that's 17/1007 inch thick. This one, it's a little bit less than 20 thousandths. And I'd like to get them right at or below 17. Although the action over the higher frets on the Yamaha was good before I leveled them, Unfortunately, the height of the nut slots on the Yamaha is way too high. This would have been really hard to learn to play on. Even the high E string is over 20 thousandths of an inch. Use the right size file. I'll file, put the string on and measure, and keep doing that until it catches just a little bit. So I gotta tune it back up now. And just make sure it doesn't buzz when I play an open string. So I didn't go too low. Perfect. And basically do that for all the strings on both the guitars. Okay, now let me check the B string. Okay, it's way under 17. Does it play without a buzz? No. I went too far. Darn it. Cover the side of the nut slot with tape. Nut slot powder to fill in that overfiled slot. Get it all filled up from top to bottom. Carefully get that soaked with CA glue. So here's the 17 thousandths. B is definitely good. No buzz. Since all the slots are way too high, I think it's going to save time to just remove the nut and sand down the bottom. I'll put the finishing touches on with the nut slot files. I've sanded down the bottom of the nut so that the strings are all below 20 thousandths of an inch. Now it's time to glue it back in place and then get out the nut slot files. Give that a couple drops of wood glue while that's drying. Time to crown the frets on the Fender. Mark up the frets again. Get out the Gurion file. That took somewhere around 1 billion hours. But all the frets have that nice ridge on the top. And they all play without buzzing. While they're in tune. Now it's time to get the crowning and the polishing done on the Yamaha. I crowned the frets on the Yamaha. They're a little thinner than the ones on the Fender. A little bit easier to crown. They were also easier to crown because they had a lot of corrosion. I didn't even need the marker on these frets. Look at the frets that are a little dull and corroded, and look at the ones that are real nice and shiny. You can tell if they're done. Crown polished, oiled, and clean. Gotta oil the Fender. The last thing might be to straighten out the tuner. First thing I gotta do, get the old hole full of glue and stick a splinter in there. Let that dry. Make sure to get it nice and straight. Gonna tighten the bolt in the front. So it's looking a little better. I'm almost done, right? One of the tuners didn't have the little washer, so I figured, okay, I'll just put a different one on there. Bass, they won't fit. So I took the button off another tuner. And that's when I realized a little bit of the shaft has been snapped off of this tuner. Thought it was all done. Then I thought, okay, I have one last thing. I'll put the washer on there. Now I realize it needs new tuners. But fortunately, I do have these extra tuners lying around. These are made in Canada. They're from I took these off a Simon and Patrick guitar. They're kind of Grover style tuners. It's easy to mark where to drill with these tuners. Get them nice and straight. Then just press really hard. And it makes a nice indent. Okay, new tuners are looking good. The old ones were good tuners, but these are great tuners. And that's about it. At long last, I can finally say I've gone over every detail of both of these guitars. Got a fresh pack of strings on them both. These are set up for extra light gauge strings, 10 to 47. So whatever kind of strings you get, I just suggest that they're 10 to 47 gauge. The tuners are great. The nut slots are both filed so that the higher up strings are less than 17 thousandths of an inch over the first fret and less than 20 thousandths of an inch under the low E string on the 1st fret. At the 12th fret, both guitars have an action of 4/64ths of an inch along the high E string and an action height of 5/64ths of an inch on the low E strings. Truss rods are working and adjusted. There's no breaks anywhere along the neck or body or the bridge, and they play really nice and smooth and clean from the open strings all the way up to the high frets, and they both get a really nice sound, which I'll demonstrate in the playing video.